Victoria Hayes heard her husband's mocking words. Sign or get out. He waved the papers inside the house she had paid for in full, smirking as if forcing her out would shatter her. She signed them calmly, set the keys on the table, and walked away. The next morning, his supposedly elite attorney was shouting at him. Do you have any idea what you just let her do? We need to talk about the house. At 7 in the morning, Daniel Carter's voice cut through the silence. I found him sitting in my office chair, dressed in a suit, his new leather briefcase resting at his feet. He had spread out my financial records across the desk, bank statements, mortgage documents, and the deed, arranged like evidence in a courtroom. I've done the math, he said, pulling out a yellow legal pad filled with scribbles. It's time we talk about who really owns what in this marriage. The briefcase looked expensive, with polished brown leather and combination locks, the kind carried by men who wanted to appear important in meetings they would never attend. Daniel sat behind my desk as if he belonged there, in the very office where I had built Hayes Consulting Group from the ground up into a 7-figure enterprise. Morning light came through the window, catching the dust between us. I noticed he had moved my achievement plaques aside to make space for his pad of paper. You went through my locked cabinet, I said, not as a question. That cabinet held original contracts worth millions, sensitive agreements protected by NDAs. Our cabinet, Daniel corrected, tapping his pencil. Marriage is a partnership, Victoria. 50-50. That's what my attorney says. The words lingered between us while I studied the man I had married 4 years earlier. He wore the charcoal suit I had bought him for a job interview he never attended, claiming the company wasn't prestigious enough for his grand vision. His hair was styled with my expensive pomade, and even his posture looked rehearsed, as if he had practiced this confrontation in front of a mirror. I stepped closer, seeing how he had neatly arranged my files. The mortgage record showing every payment I had made, the property taxes filed in my name alone. The deed dated 2 years before Daniel and I even met, purchased with inheritance money from my grandmother, who had worked 3 jobs to save it. Your attorney, I repeated, picking up the Lexington Group contract he had shoved aside. That single deal had brought in more revenue than Daniel had earned in his entire life. This was the same Daniel who just last month had sneered that lawyers were parasites, when I had hired Linda Morales to review our expansion documents. Now he sat in my ergonomic chair, a chair that cost more than his monthly gym membership, insisting this was about protecting our interests. I glanced at his legal pad. The messy cursive looked like a child's attempt at handwriting. At the top, he had written marital assets and listed everything I owned, even what I had acquired before the marriage. My grandmother's jewelry, the Vermont cabin left by my father, the original artwork I had bought to celebrate closing my first $1 million deal. Daniel stood and faced me directly. I've contributed to this marriage, Victoria. While you were building your company, I maintained our home. I supported your career. Maintained our home. I thought of the contractors I had hired to fix the leaking roof Daniel never noticed. The landscapers I paid because his idea of yard work was hiring neighborhood kids who never showed up. The cleaning service I covered while he enjoyed endless lunches with so-called business partners who had no businesses at all. Is that what you told your lawyer? I asked, spotting a Harper & Company business card peeking out from the pile of mortgage statements. That you maintained our home while I worked? I've made sacrifices, Daniel's voice rose. I put my career on hold for this marriage. His career. The consulting company that never had a client. The app project that never produced an app. The investment advisory service that never advised anyone because Daniel lacked the licenses and never bothered to get them. I moved to the window and looked out at the garden I had designed and paid for, where I planted roses from my grandmother's house after her passing. That same inheritance had allowed me to buy this home when Daniel was still living in his brother's basement, playing video games until dawn while talking about potential and opportunity. This house is mine, Daniel, I said softly, as I watched Mr. O'Connor walk his beagle down the driveway, my driveway. It belonged to me before we even met. The deed is in my name. I paid every mortgage bill, every repair, every improvement. We're married, Daniel replied, as though those 2 words erased years of financial records. The law says premarital assets remain separate unless they're commingled, I answered. And I've been very careful not to mix them. Daniel's face tightened. He waved bank statements at me. These show transfers from your business account into our joint account, for groceries, utilities, your personal spending. That's proof everything is shared. He slammed the papers down, his composure cracking. I deserve something for these 4 years. You can't. I held the deed up to the light. You can't claim what I bought with my inheritance. You can't take what I have paid for month after month while you wasted time at the gym, at lunches, at networking events that went nowhere. Daniel snatched his briefcase, fumbling with the locks. This isn't over. Charles Harper is one of the best divorce lawyers in the state. Charles Harper advertises on bus benches, I said dryly, remembering the tacky yellow posters I'd seen downtown. He's been suspended twice for ethics violations. Daniel's face went pale. How do you know that? He stammered. I run a consulting firm, I replied. Research is what successful businesses do. Something you'd know if any of your ventures had lasted beyond PowerPoint slides. He clutched the briefcase to his chest like armor. The light from the window made him look younger, almost like the man I had once met at a conference, who spoke about ambition and partnership. We'll see what happens when the papers are filed, he said, moving toward the door. You might be surprised at what a good lawyer can accomplish. I sat down in my chair, still warm from where he had been, and opened my email. 3 new client inquiries, a contract renewal from Hamilton & Sons, and a message from Linda Morales marked urgent. Read immediately. She had been preparing for this day for months. Daniel, I called as he reached the door. He turned, a flicker of hope on his face. The locks will be changed by the time you get home tonight. They wouldn't be changed for another 6 hours, but I had more pressing matters. Just 20 minutes later, Sophie Grant knocked on my door with the monthly financial statements I usually reviewed myself. Her uneasy expression made my stomach sink. I wasn't sure if I should bring these directly to you, she said, placing the folder on my desk with unusual hesitation. Sophie had been with me for 3 years, hired right out of business school, and I had never seen her this uncomfortable. Daniel took them from accounting yesterday. He said he was helping with the monthly review. I opened the folder and flipped through the credit card statements. At first, everything looked normal, but on the 3rd page I found it, hidden between charges for a lunch meeting and office supplies. Harper & Company, retainer fee of $2,500, dated 3 weeks earlier. That very same day, Daniel Carter had surprised me with flowers and dinner at my favorite restaurant, claiming he wanted to celebrate my most recent contract win. Sophie, I said, keeping my voice steady even as anger simmered inside me. Did Daniel mention anything when he picked these up? She shifted uncomfortably. He said he wanted to understand the business better, that he hoped to be more involved in your success. She hesitated, then added softly. He also asked if I knew how corporate assets are handled in partnerships. I assumed he meant business partnerships. Of course he did. Daniel, who could barely balance his own checking account, suddenly taking an interest in corporate asset division. As I kept turning the pages, I found 2 more consultations charged to our joint account. One with a real estate assessor, and another with someone named Nathan Foster, whose LinkedIn profile I quickly pulled up. He was a business valuator specializing in privately held companies. At exactly 12:30, my phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen next to a photo from our wedding day. We were both smiling at something just out of frame. My cousin had been making faces to coax a natural laugh from us. We had looked happy then, never imagining one of us would betray the other so deliberately. Hi, sweetheart. Daniel's voice came through, carrying an odd tone, as if he were reading from cue cards. What time will you be home tonight? I'm planning something special for dinner. Daniel didn't cook. In 4 years of marriage, his greatest culinary achievement had been burnt toast and occasionally reheating leftovers without ruining them. Something special. We need to talk about our future, he continued, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. I've been thinking about making changes that will benefit both of us. His words sounded rehearsed, like he had practiced them in the bathroom mirror after I left that morning. I pictured him there, gesturing at his reflection, trying out different inflections until he found one that sounded more authoritative than desperate. I'll be home by 7, I lied, already rearranging my schedule in my mind. Should I bring wine? No, I've got everything covered. Another first. Daniel handling anything outside of his gym routine was unusual. Just bring yourself. After the call, I sat in my office, weighed down by the reality of what was unfolding. The man who once needed written instructions to use our coffee machine was now orchestrating something he thought clever. The same man who had forgotten our anniversary twice was suddenly detail-oriented enough to hire lawyers and consultants without my knowledge. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother's Florida number, which instantly filled me with dread. She never called during business hours unless something was seriously wrong. "Victoria, honey, I'm confused about something," she began without preamble. "Daniel called this morning asking about your father's Vermont cabin. He wanted to know if the deed was in your name or still part of the estate. The cabin, 2 acres of untouched lakefront property my father left me when he passed away 5 years earlier. Daniel had been there only once, complaining the entire weekend about the lack of Wi-Fi before swearing he would never return." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "Nothing specific, but he pressed me. Said he was helping you organize family assets for tax purposes." She paused, her doubt clear in her voice. "Since when does Daniel care about taxes? Last Christmas he didn't even know what a W-2 was." "Mom, did he ask about anything else? Grandma's jewelry? Whether it was appraised?" Her tone sharpened. "Victoria, that boy has shown up at exactly 1 family gathering in 4 years. And now he's calling me about deeds and appraisals? He was at his brother's bachelor party during your father's funeral. He skipped your grandmother's 90th birthday for a so-called networking retreat that turned out to be a golf trip. He's never cared about this family beyond asking if there were trust funds he should know about. Don't tell him anything else. If he calls again, just send him to me." "Already done," she said with a dark chuckle. "I told him my memory isn't what it used to be. But trust me, my memory is just fine. I remember exactly what I think of men who plot attacks while pretending to love you." After hanging up with her, I dialed Linda Morales directly. She answered on the second ring, her tone sharp and professional even though I had called her personal line. "Victoria, I wondered when you'd reach out. You were expecting this?" "I've been expecting it since Daniel showed up at the Kensington Charity Gala last month, cornering divorce attorneys during cocktail hour. Word travels fast in legal circles." I thought back to that night. Daniel had disappeared for an hour, claiming he was networking. I had been too focused on securing a donation for the women's shelter to notice his absence. "Let me pull up your file," Linda said, her keyboard clicking rapidly. "The VHA Family Trust, established 2 years before your marriage. The house is titled exclusively under the trust. Your company is incorporated separately with you as the sole owner. All your premarital assets are documented and never mixed with marital funds. So I'm protected?" "More than protected," she said with a smile I could hear in her voice. "Legally speaking, you're bulletproof. Daniel can hire every lawyer from here to Manhattan. Your documentation is airtight. Then why does it still feel like I'm losing something?" "Because you are," Linda said gently. "You're losing the illusion of who you thought you married. That's harder than losing money. What do you recommend?" "Let him play his hand. Record everything, conversations, financial moves, meetings with his bargain basement attorney. Men like him always overplay when they think they're winning. Their egos become evidence." I thought of Daniel earlier that morning, sitting in my chair with his new briefcase and rehearsed posture, pretending to be in control. He wasn't just planning a divorce, he was staging a takeover. "Linda, he's planning something tonight. A dinner about our future. Then give him the performance he expects. Let him believe you're unsuspecting. The more confident he feels, the more mistakes he'll make. And record everything. Missouri is a one-party consent state. Slip your phone into your pocket. It's perfectly legal." I hung up feeling steadier though sadder too. That morning, Daniel had been my disappointing husband. By afternoon, he had become my adversary. By nightfall, he would reveal himself as something worse. A man who had spent years lying beside me while quietly plotting betrayal, practicing his lines in the mirror, convinced he could take everything I had built just by watching me build it. At exactly 7, I arrived home with my phone recording in my jacket pocket, its weight a small comfort. The house smelled off, soy sauce mixed with something synthetic. Daniel had ordered Chinese food, but not from our usual restaurant. This was from the cheap place near the highway, the one we swore never to return to after finding a hair in the rice. He had set the dining table with my grandmother's Wedgwood china, the delicate blue and white plates she had carried from England in 1952. We had used them only twice in 4 years, our first anniversary and the night my biggest client signed a 5-year extension. Both times Daniel had complained about washing them by hand, saying it was pretentious to own dishes you couldn't run through a dishwasher. Now he moved around the kitchen with unfamiliar purpose, plating orange chicken and beef with broccoli onto porcelain that had survived 2 world wars and 3 generations, only to serve as props in Daniel's performance. He had even lit the expensive candles I saved for emergencies, dimming the lights to what he thought was romantic, but instead, the room felt more like a funeral parlor. "Sit," Daniel Carter said, motioning toward my usual chair while he remained standing, a manila folder tucked tightly under his arm. He had changed into another suit, a navy one, also bought with my credit card during last year's failed job search. "We need to have an honest conversation about our marriage." I sat down, noticing how he positioned himself between me and the door. Clearly, this was something his bargain lawyer had advised. Control the exit, establish dominance, make her feel cornered. What neither Daniel nor his cut-rate attorney understood was that I had negotiated with corporate executives who thrived on intimidation games. He cleared his throat and launched into what was obviously a prepared speech. "Victoria, we've grown apart. Our paths have diverged in ways neither of us expected when we set our vows." He paused dramatically the way actors do in movies. "I've been soul-searching, going to therapy, working on myself." Therapy. That was new. Unless he counted YouTube motivational videos as professional help, Daniel had never stepped foot in a therapist's office. Still, he continued, his voice adopting the smooth cadence of a bad TED Talk. "I've realized our marriage is unbalanced. You're consumed by work, and I've been left to manage everything else alone. The emotional labor, the household management, the sacrifice of my own dreams to support yours." I sipped my water, letting him ramble while studying his face. His gestures were too coordinated, his pauses too calculated. Even the way he placed his hands on the chair back looked rehearsed. "I think it's best if we separate," he finally said, sliding the manila folder across the table, nudging aside a container of sweet and sour sauce. "I've had papers drawn up. They're fair to both of us." I opened the folder while he watched, his breathing quickening. The first page was exactly what I had expected. Nothing more than a template downloaded online, filled in with laughable interpretations of property law. He wanted the house, citing his so-called contributions to its upkeep. He wanted alimony, claiming career sacrifices. He even listed Hayes Consulting Group as a marital asset, insisting he had been my unofficial consultant throughout its growth. "You want half of Hayes Consulting Group," I said flatly. "I've been your sounding board for every decision," Daniel pressed, gaining confidence. "I've attended networking events, supported your late nights, sacrificed my own entrepreneurial ventures." Flipping to the next page, I saw more outrageous claims. My grandmother's jewelry described as marital gifts. My father's Vermont cabin, labeled joint recreational property. Even my car, purchased 6 months before our wedding, suddenly reclassified as a shared asset. Daniel moved closer, standing over me. "This is what's fair, Victoria. What we built together should be divided equally." I continued reading silently, my face expressionless, while inside I catalogued each ridiculous demand, every impossible claim, every shred of evidence that Daniel had no idea what he had signed earlier that morning in my office. Those documents had been decoys, left where I knew his curiosity would lead him. Growing impatient, he snapped, "Well, are you going to sign? You want the house?" I asked. "I deserve the house. I made it a home while you treated it like a hotel. And the business, our business built during our marriage. Community property. And the Vermont cabin, where we made memories together." Each lie came out more confidently than the last, as if repetition could transform fiction into fact. He had spent exactly 1 night at the cabin, complaining nonstop, before leaving early and blaming a mysterious allergy to pine trees that never seemed to bother him at Christmas. I picked up the cheap blue pen he had placed on the table. He stepped back, anticipating victory, his phone already in hand, probably ready to text his brother or gym buddies about his success. "No," I said calmly, setting the pen down. His face flushed. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. I'm not signing these papers. His practiced composure cracked like peeling paint. You have to sign them. This is what's happening. I've made my decision. Your decision? I stood, matching his height in my heels. Your decision about my house, my company, my inheritance? Daniel clenched his fists. Our house. Our company. 4 years of marriage makes it ours. That's not how property law works, I replied. He slammed his palm on the table so hard the china rattled. Don't lecture me about the law. My attorney says. Your attorney, the one who advertises on bus benches? His face turned purple with anger. He leaned across the table, lowering his voice as if trying to sound menacing. You're going to sign these papers, Victoria. You can do it voluntarily, or we can do this the hard way. The hard way? I asked coolly. What exactly does that mean? He straightened, puffing himself up, and pointed at the door. Sign the papers or get out. This is my house now. I've established residency. I've contributed to its maintenance. Sign or pack your things and leave. His words hung in the air, just as Linda Morales had predicted. He had delivered the ultimatum exactly as his discount attorney must have coached him, unaware that in less than 30 seconds he had committed several legal blunders. All of it recorded on my phone. I picked up the pen again, and Daniel's entire body relaxed, relief washing over his face. He believed he had won. Slowly and deliberately I signed each page, making him watch every stroke of my name. Each signature carried the same precision I use for million-dollar contracts. When I finished, I placed the pen down, then carefully removed my keys from my pocket and set them beside the papers. With quiet ceremony, I slipped off my wedding ring, the platinum band I had purchased myself after Daniel claimed rings were outdated symbols of ownership, and placed it next to the keys. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. That's it? You're just leaving? Daniel called after me, his voice a strange mix of confusion and triumph. I paused at the doorway, looking back at him, standing amid takeout boxes and my grandmother's china, clutching papers he didn't understand, celebrating a victory that existed only in his imagination. I said nothing. Some things were better delivered through legal channels. 20 minutes later, I sat in Linda Morales's conference room, the one usually reserved for depositions and settlement negotiations. She had stayed late as promised, with coffee in real cups, not the gas station paper ones Daniel favored. Legal documents were spread neatly across the table, tabbed and labeled with precision. He said it? Linda asked, pulling up social media on her laptop. Word for word. Sign or get out. He even pointed at the door. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Perfect. Now let's see what he's been posting while you were at dinner. The screen glowed with Daniel's latest Instagram post, uploaded less than an hour after I left the house. The photo showed him raising a beer in my living room, surrounded by his gym buddies, with the caption, "New chapter starts now. Sometimes you have to remove toxic people to find peace. Hashtag fresh start, hashtag my house morals, hashtag leveling up." He's literally broadcasting evidence, Linda said, taking screenshots with methodical precision. Look at this one. He had even posted a photo of my home office, now turned into what looked like a gaming paradise. 3 monitors lined my handcrafted desk. LED lights ran along the walls I had painted myself. His collection of action figures now filled the space where my achievement awards once stood. The caption read, "Finally turning this workspace into something productive. No more corporate prison vibes." My phone buzzed with a text from Laura Ramirez, my neighbor 2 houses down. We weren't close, but we shared the kind of polite friendship built on morning waves during runs and accepting each other's packages. Her message was short. Daniel's having quite the party. Just saw him giving a tour to about 10 people. He's telling everyone you abandoned the marriage for your career. Thought you should know. Almost immediately, another message arrived with a video attachment. Laura had filmed from her kitchen window, capturing Daniel on my front porch with his brother and several men I recognized from his gym. His voice carried clearly across the quiet street. She chose spreadsheets over family. I gave her an ultimatum and she just walked out. Can you believe that? 4 years of supporting her ambition, and she couldn't even fight for us. I set my phone down on the marble counter of my hotel suite's bathroom. The Hilton downtown wasn't cheap, but it gave me a space that felt controlled and professional, free of the memories clinging to every corner of my home. The suite had a separate living area with a desk, where I had already set up my laptop to prepare for what came next. Then my phone lit up with a call from Anthony Lopez, my CFO. He rarely called after hours unless something urgent was happening. "The transition is complete," he said without preamble. "All company accounts have been restructured. Daniel Carter's access was terminated at 8:47 p.m. His corporate card has been deactivated, and all automatic payments linked to it are suspended pending reassignment." "How many automatic payments?" I asked. 17, he replied, "including his Audi lease, gym membership, country club fees, wine storage, and something called executive presence coaching, charging him $400 a month for the past year." Executive presence coaching. Daniel had told me it was career counseling to help launch his consulting business. In reality, I had been funding a life coach who fed his ego, while he contributed nothing to our household beyond dirty dishes and empty promises. "Document everything, Anthony. Create a full audit trail. Already in progress. And one more thing." He tried to use the company card 20 minutes ago at Titan Sports Lounge. Declined. Of course. He had tried to charge his celebration party to the same company card he had been abusing for years, paying for endless lunches with so-called partners who never turned into real opportunities. Minutes later, my phone rang again. This time Julia Hayes' face appeared on the screen, a photo from last Christmas when she had visited from Seattle. My younger sister, 3 years my junior but decades ahead in reading people. She had never liked Daniel, though she had been polite at family gatherings. "What kind of manipulative stunt is Daniel pulling now?" Her voice was tight with anger. "He just called me saying you're having a breakdown, that you walked out on your marriage and need space. He even suggested I push you to get therapy for your workaholism." "He called you 20 minutes ago?" "Yes." "He acted so concerned, like a devoted husband. He kept saying you'd chosen your career over family, that he had tried everything but you only cared about money." I walked to the window, staring down at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Daniel was partying in my house, spreading his version of events, the villain story he'd crafted, painting me as the cold, career-obsessed wife who abandoned her loving husband. "Julia, he's trying to control the narrative before." "Before what, Victoria? What's really happening?" Because the Daniel who called me sounded coached, like he was reading a script. He used words Daniel doesn't even know: emotional labor, relationship equity. Since when does he talk like that? Since his lawyer told him what to say. Silence stretched for a few seconds before Julia's voice returned sharper. "He's trying to take the house, isn't he? The house Grandma's money bought. 4 years of you paying for everything while he played entrepreneur. And now he wants to steal what you built. That parasite. Remember when Dad was in the hospital? Where was Daniel then? Right, off at a so-called networking retreat that was actually a golf weekend. He visited once in 3 months, 20 minutes total. And now he's lecturing me about family values." She softened slightly. "Do you want me to grab anything from the house? Important papers, Grandma's jewelry, anything he might damage or claim?" "Not yet. Let him believe he's winning." "Victoria, I know you. You're planning something." "I'm not planning anything. I'm just documenting reality while Daniel invents his own fantasy." After she hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into our banking app. The joint account showed his attempted spending in real time. $127 at Titan Sports Lounge, declined. $84 at the liquor store, declined. $45 at the pizza shop, declined. Each rejection carried a timestamp, forming a digital trail of his unraveling celebration. Then a text arrived from Sophie Grant. Daniel called the office asking about accessing the company portal. Said he needed to review partnership documents. Security flagged it as unauthorized. Partnership documents. Daniel, who had never been a partner in anything except draining my money, was now trying to establish a claim to my company. Clearly, his attorney had told him to collect evidence of involvement, without understanding that every failed login, every call, every attempt was being logged by people who knew how to document everything. Another buzz from Instagram. Daniel had posted a photo of my wine cellar, the one I had custom built to store my investment-grade vintages. He had opened a bottle of 2015 Chateau Margaux worth $800 and was pouring it into red plastic cups for his gym buddies. The caption read, "Life's too short to save things for special occasions. Today is the special occasion." Linda Morales texted me instantly. "He's documenting destruction of separate property. Keep recording everything." The hotel room was painfully quiet after years of Daniel's constant noise. His video games, endless conference calls, for businesses that never existed, motivational podcasts blasting at volumes that suggested success could be absorbed by sheer volume. Here, in this temporary refuge, I could finally think clearly. Then another message arrived. This one from the Audi dealership. "Ms. Hayes, we've been trying to reach Daniel Carter regarding his lease payment. The account on file has been declined. Please contact us at your earliest convenience." His first stumble had begun. Tomorrow, when he woke up hungover in my house, surrounded by empty bottles and the wreckage of his premature victory, the calls would start. The gym asking about his membership, the country club about his access card, the wine storage facility about unpaid fees. Each small failure would pile into an avalanche of reality that no amount of Instagram filters could disguise. I closed my laptop and prepared for bed, in sheets that no longer smelled of Daniel's cologne or carried the weight of his empty promises. Tomorrow promised new evidence, fresh mistakes, and more of Daniel Carter's false celebrations over a victory that only existed in his imagination. Morning arrived with a text from Sophie Grant that jolted me upright in the hotel bed. "Can we meet before the office opens? There's something I should have told you months ago." The timestamp read 5:47 a.m. Sophie never texted before 7 unless it was serious. We met at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from my office, the kind of place where people whispered about business deals while staring at their laptops. Sophie was already there, nervously shredding a napkin into tiny pieces, her usual composure gone. 3 months ago, during the Sterling Enterprises conference, she began abruptly, "I saw Daniel at the Hilton downtown. You were giving your keynote, and I had stepped out to handle that emergency with the Chicago contract. He was with someone, a young blonde woman very fit." The soft jazz music in the cafe blurred as I processed her words. 3 months ago, Daniel had told me he couldn't attend the conference because of a stomach bug. While I delivered a presentation to 300 industry leaders, my husband was 6 blocks away at a hotel. "I convinced myself it was a client meeting," Sophie continued. "Daniel was always talking about new ventures. I thought maybe he had finally found an investor." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through Instagram. "But then last week I saw this." The screen showed the profile of Ashley Monroe, a personal trainer and influencer. In her latest posts, Ashley was wearing my diamond tennis bracelet, the one Daniel claimed had been sent for cleaning 2 months earlier. Another photo showed her wearing my Cartier watch, supposedly lost during our last vacation. And around her neck was my grandmother's pearl necklace, a wedding gift from my grandfather in 1951. "These are all your things, right?" Sophie whispered. "I recognized them from company events." The pearls Daniel had claimed were at the jeweler. The watch that had disappeared from our dresser. The bracelet he said had fallen off during a golf outing, complete with an insurance claim I never questioned. While I stared at Ashley's photos, Linda Morales called. "My forensic accountant found something," she said. "Daniel opened a separate account 4 months ago at Capital First Bank. Not your branch, but using your home address with only his name. So far $37,000 in cash deposits. Structured to avoid reporting." Papers shuffled in the background as she continued. "The timing matches missing items from your inventory, your grandmother's silver tea service, the signed first editions from your father's library, several valuable pieces from your storage unit. My father's books. His complete Hemingway collection, built over 40 years, each volume carefully chosen. Daniel had told me the unit was reorganized for climate control, that everything was safer in new containers. He's been liquidating assets for months," Linda said flatly. "Building an escape fund while you covered the mortgage, utilities, his car, insurance, food, his gym membership. You funded his lifestyle while he stole from you to bankroll his exit. After we hung up, I drove to the house, not to confront him, but to visit Mrs. Delgado next door. She opened the door immediately, as if expecting me. At 73, she was as sharp as a legal brief, and she had lived there longer than I had. She never cared for Daniel, calling him that loud man whenever his music ruined her afternoon tea. "I need to show you something," she said, leading me to her dining room where a laptop sat open. "My grandson set up doorbell cameras after those package thefts. They catch everything." The footage played. Date stamped 2 weeks earlier at 2:47 p.m. Daniel's Audi pulling into our driveway. He got out and opened the passenger door for Ashley, his hand resting on her lower back as they laughed and walked to my front door. The casual familiarity of people who had done this often. "There's more," Mrs. Delgado said, clicking another file. "From last month, Ashley arriving alone with her own key." "Your key." She walked inside as if she owned the place, staying 3 hours while I was in Boston for a client meeting. Another clip showed them hauling boxes into Daniel's car. "My boxes, my belongings, stolen piece by piece while I worked 14-hour days to pay for the roof over their heads." "I should have spoken sooner," Mrs. Delgado apologized softly. "But I wasn't sure it was my place to interfere in a marriage." Back at the hotel, Linda had more research ready. Charles Harper, Daniel's lawyer, looked even worse under scrutiny. 2 suspensions for ethics violations, one for mishandling client funds, another for filing frivolous lawsuits. His flashy website promised aggressive representation for men's rights, with glowing testimonials my investigator confirmed were fabricated. "He advertises on Facebook and Craigslist," Linda said, her disdain evident. "His success rate is 12%. Most cases end badly or are dismissed outright. Daniel found him through a sponsored post bragging about David versus Goliath victories. The irony is delicious. Daniel, convinced of his brilliance, had hired a lawyer whose incompetence was public record. He chose flash over substance, marketing over merit, the same way he had approached everything in our marriage. Later, Anthony Lopez updated me on Daniel's finances. His executive presence coaching was canceled for non-payment. His wine storage sent default notices. The country club suspended his membership for overdue dues. One domino after another, his image crumbled with each declined transaction. That evening, Ashley posted another photo, this time wearing my grandmother's emerald ring, while dining at the same restaurant where Daniel had proposed to me 4 years earlier. Her caption, "When you know, you know." Hashtag new beginnings, hashtag upgrade. So my life, my work, my grandmother's jewelry, just placeholders until Daniel could trade me in for a younger model. The truth was now bigger than adultery or financial fraud. It exposed years of calculated planning by a man who treated our marriage as a business venture from day one, staying just long enough to stage what he thought would be a profitable exit. The next morning, Linda and I arrived early at her office to review the Viche family trust documentation, once more before the inevitable calls began. The sun filled her corner windows, illuminating the stacks of papers that reduce 4 years of marriage into asset lists and legal precedents. At exactly 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with an automated alert from the Audi dealership. Daniel's car had been repossessed 30 minutes earlier, taken directly from my driveway. The tow truck driver even left a notice taped to the front door. "Contact financial services immediately." Daniel, who rarely woke before 11, would stumble outside hours later expecting his prize status symbol, and find nothing. By midnight, the company email address I had once set up for Daniel Carter's consulting firm was terminated. The account was gone, just like the business that never existed. His phone would be next. Soon the device in his hand would be nothing more than an expensive paperweight without service. At 9:15 a.m., Laura Ramirez texted me a photo from her living room window. Daniel stood in my driveway in his pajamas, staring at the empty space where his Audi had been. He clutched the repossession notice as if it were written in a foreign language. Even from a distance I could see the confusion shift into panic as he tried calling someone, anyone, only to realize his phone had no service. Moments later, Linda Morales' paralegal entered with fresh coffee, her expression betraying amusement. "Mr. Carter just tried to use the Keurig at the house. The app shows 5 failed attempts. He also tried the TV, the sound system, and the automated blinds. Everything had been disconnected from his access. The smart home system I'd installed the previous year, all tied to my account, no longer recognized him." Daniel had mocked it as pointless tech, but he'd enjoyed barking voice commands to adjust the lights and thermostat. Now the house itself had turned against him. At 9:42, Ashley Monroe updated her Instagram story. She was at brunch with a new man, his Rolex gleaming as he poured champagne. The caption read, "When the universe removes toxic people automatically. #blessed, #trading up, #new energy." She had tagged Daniel at first, then deleted it within minutes. She'd already moved on. Anthony Lopez called soon after. Update on his transactions this morning. Coffee declined. 3 gas stations declined. He even tried Apple Pay linked to the corporate account we shut down at midnight. And right now he's at an ATM trying to access the joint account. Balance is 0 after the transfer. Daniel's entire financial ecosystem had collapsed overnight. Every card, every account, every automatic payment that had kept his lifestyle afloat for 4 years was gone. The man who had celebrated a false victory last night was waking up to the reality that his empire had been built on someone else's foundation. At 10 o'clock sharp, Charles Harper's name flashed on Linda's phone. She put the call on speaker. We could hear frantic papers rustling and rapid typing in the background. "Miss Morales, I need clarification about some documentation," Harper began, his voice higher than yesterday's swagger. "This VHA family trust you mentioned. My client believed the property was a marital asset. Your client signed documents acknowledging it was held in the trust," Linda replied smoothly. "His signature appears on 7 pages confirming he understood the ownership structure. There may have been confusion about the implications of those signatures," Harper stammered. "Confusion?" Linda pulled the files on her screen. "Mr. Carter signed a separation agreement demanding sole rights to property he knew belonged to the trust. That is documentary fraud. I'm sure someone who advertises expertise in property law recognizes the severity." The typing stopped. Harper's breathing quickened, followed by muffled voices as he covered the receiver. Finally he returned strained. "I need to review this with my client. There seems to be a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Linda replied coldly. "Your client tried to claim property he never owned, while planning to profit from it through short-term rentals. We have his social media posts, his listings, and his signed acknowledgments. Would you like me to send the evidence file?" A pause. Then Harper, barely controlling his voice, snapped at someone in his office. "Get Daniel Carter on the phone immediately." The speaker crackled and then Daniel's voice burst through, panicked and angry. "Tom, what's happening? My car is gone. My cards don't work. I can't even make coffee in my own house." "It's not your house," Harper said flatly. "It never was. What are you talking about? I have the agreement. She signed it. She gave me the house." Harper finally lost his composure, shouting, "Do you realize what you just did? You signed documents claiming ownership of trust property established before your marriage. You committed fraud. She didn't give you anything. You handed her evidence to bury you." Silence. Daniel's shallow, rapid breaths were the only sound as reality pierced his delusion. Harper kept going, his voice now frantic. "The property was never marital. Your social posts show intent to commit fraud. The agreement is worthless. You cannot transfer ownership of what you never owned. By demanding exclusive rights, you admitted in writing you knew the trust structure and tried to steal it. But you said, possession is 9/10 of the law. If I established residency. I said that before I knew about the trust. Before I knew about your posts. Before I saw your signatures." Harper's voice rose nearly to a shout. "You need to vacate immediately today, before she files criminal charges." Linda unmuted our side. "Mr. Harper, we're willing to give your client 72 hours to leave, provided he doesn't damage the property or remove anything not his. After that, we'll move forward with eviction and fraud charges." Even as she spoke, we heard Daniel yelling in the background about squatters' rights and tenant laws. The call ended abruptly as Harper muttered about reviewing precedents. Linda closed her laptop, satisfaction written across her face. "The eviction notice will be served tomorrow morning at 7. Deputy Collins has already been briefed. He's handled dozens of cases like this." The next morning, I watched from my hotel window as the sunrise turned downtown gold. At precisely 7 a.m., Laura Ramirez texted me a video. Deputy Collins, crisp in uniform, walking up my driveway with official papers that marked the beginning of Daniel Carter's removal. 20 minutes later my phone rang. Daniel Carter's number flashed across my screen, calling from a landline now that his cell service was dead. I answered on the third ring, my voice calm and professional. "Victoria, we need to talk about this situation," he began. The false bravado was gone. "This has gotten out of hand. Maybe we should sit down and discuss this like adults." We did discuss it, Daniel. You gave me separation papers demanding my house, my business, and my inherited assets. I signed exactly what you put in front of me. That was just negotiation tactics. You know how lawyers are, they always start high. His voice cracked, desperation seeping through. "We could work this out ourselves. Maybe try counseling. Remember how good things were in the beginning." The beginning, when Daniel had introduced himself as an ambitious entrepreneur between ventures. I had mistaken confidence for competence, dreams for plans, promises for potential. Daniel, the Viche Family Trust was established 2 years before we even met. Every mortgage payment came from my business account. You signed documents acknowledging the ownership structure. There's nothing to work out. His tone shifted, conciliatory, melting into anger within seconds. You set me up. You planned this marriage as a business deal. The marriage was real. Your contribution wasn't. For years you never paid a single household bill, never touched the mortgage, never even bought groceries unless it was with my credit card. I supported you emotionally. I maintained our home. I sacrificed my career. His voice rose, repeating the lines his attorney must have drilled into him. You played video games while I worked 14-hour days. You went to the gym while I closed million-dollar contracts. You cheated while I spoke at conferences to earn the money you spent. My tone stayed level, stripped of emotion. You didn't sacrifice anything because you never had anything to sacrifice. Silence lingered before he returned, smaller now, pleading. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money. My car's gone. You've destroyed my life. Your brother is coming with a moving truck this afternoon. You have 72 hours to collect your belongings. Only what actually belongs to you. Not what was bought with my money or legally mine. At 2 p.m., Daniel's brother showed up with a U-Haul far too large for what Daniel actually owned. Through Mrs. Delgado's security camera feed, I watched them haul out his things. The gaming chair purchased with my quarterly dividend, exercise equipment bought during his short-lived fitness influencer phase with my annual bonus, and vision boards from a life coach program I had funded that he never finished. Laura Ramirez kept me updated by text. They're fighting over the television. Daniel insists it's his. His brother just showed him the receipt on your credit card. 20 minutes later, another text arrived. He's in the driveway, yelling at neighbors who are pretending to water already drenched lawns. Mrs. Delgado is on her porch with tea. Mr. O'Connor walked his beagle past 3 times, slower with each lap. Daniel tried to take the Peloton bike, insisting he was the only one who used it. His brother stopped him, pointing out it had been bought on my company card. The wine fridge became another point of argument until his brother pulled up the purchase history on his phone. It had been bought years before Daniel even entered my life. By 4 o'clock, the truck contained little. His clothes, most of which I had purchased but didn't care to fight over. His stack of self-help books and business guides that never translated into action, and a pile of certificates from online courses he never completed, monuments to ambition without achievement. As the last boxes were loaded, Linda Morales called. The forensic accounting report is complete. Do you want the total? Yes. Over 4 years, Daniel Carter contributed exactly $0 to household expenses. He spent $342,768 of your money on so-called business development, networking, and professional advancement. She flipped through her papers. That includes $47,000 on gyms and fitness, $83,000 at restaurants for meetings with phantom partners, $31,000 on online courses never completed, $45,000 on travel to conferences where he claimed to be building his network. The rest went to shopping, entertainment, and cash withdrawals that line up with his time spent with Ashley. Every penny documented, every transaction tracked. If he tries to claim an interest in your assets, she added, this report proves he was nothing but a dependent who drained your resources. I thought of the countless nights I returned exhausted from client meetings, only to find Daniel lounging with a new big idea, while I paid for his dreams. $342,000 over 4 years. Money that could have funded scholarships, supported women's shelters, or launched real businesses. By late afternoon, his brother was knocking on neighbors' doors asking for more boxes and tape. Daniel stood by the U-Haul, shoulders slumped, watching his life shrink into a space smaller than my walk-in closet. The man who tried to steal my house left with barely enough to furnish a studio apartment. At 5:47, the truck pulled away with his meager possessions and oversized delusions. I stood in Mrs. Delgado's driveway, staring at the empty street where my marriage had just been carted off in cardboard boxes worth less than a single quarter of my taxes. At 6 sharp, the locksmith arrived. Michael Turner from Titan Security Solutions, the same man who had installed the smart locks 2 years earlier, worked methodically, replacing bolts, reprogramming codes, resetting the system. He said little, and his silence was a relief after days of shouting and legal wrangling. The heavy click of the sound of the new deadbolt clicked like at the end of a very long sentence. "All set, Miss Hayes," he said, handing me the gleaming keys. "The system is reset. Only your biometrics and phone can access it now." I stepped back into my house, truly my house for the first time in days. It felt different, as if the walls themselves had been holding their breath for 4 years and could finally exhale. Daniel had always kept the curtains drawn, claiming sunlight gave him headaches, when really it just suited his marathon gaming sessions. I moved room to room, pulling curtains open, raising blinds, flooding the house with evening light. The living room windows revealed the garden I had planted but rarely enjoyed, always too drained from work, while Daniel complained the patio furniture wasn't comfortable enough for his naps. The kitchen seemed bigger without his protein powder containers littering every surface. Daniel's collection of energy drink cans had left permanent rings on my grandmother's wooden table. I opened windows that had been sealed for months, letting fresh air sweep away the stale mix of his cologne and the supplements from his latest fitness transformation. The next morning, Prime Clean Services arrived with a professional cleaning crew. Not because the house was conventionally dirty, but because I needed every trace of him erased. They steam cleaned the carpets stained by his sports drinks, scrubbed the bathrooms cluttered with skincare products that never made him look younger, only more desperate. "We'll need to focus on the master bedroom," I told the crew leader, Teresa Howard. She understood instantly. She had probably seen enough divorce cleanouts to recognize this wasn't about germs. It was about reclaiming a space that had been tainted by betrayal. While they worked, I visited my storage unit, where I had safeguarded my father's books and my grandmother's china, items Daniel had dismissed as clutter that didn't fit his minimalist aesthetic, his term for bare walls he never decorated. Box by box, I brought home pieces of my life I had hidden to make room for his ego. The complete works of Maya Angelou, which he'd once called depressing. The Victorian secretary desk my grandmother used to write letters, which he claimed ruined the modern flow of the living room. My office transformation took 3 days. Down came his vision boards, dreams of businesses that never launched, goals that never materialized, motivational quotes that never motivated. In their place, I rehung my awards. The Partner of the Year plaque from Hamilton & Sons, the State Council's Excellence in Innovation certificate, and the framed first dollar from Hayes Consulting Group, earned through work Daniel had never understood. His garage gym equipment was gone, leaving a cavernous space that echoed with possibility. Within a week, contractors had built the library I had always wanted. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with the collection he once mocked as pretentious, the first editions he tried to sell behind my back, a reading chair angled toward the morning light. The room smelled of wood polish and old paper, not of sweat and rubber mats. Julia Hayes flew in from Seattle to help with the final touches, carrying a bottle of champagne she had saved since our father's death. "You finally came to your senses," she said, popping the cork in my reclaimed kitchen. We drank from my grandmother's crystal glasses, the ones Daniel had wanted to sell because no one uses crystal anymore. News of his eviction spread quickly. Anthony mentioned that Sterling Enterprises had asked about the change in my emergency contact. Laura Ramirez's husband, who worked at the golf club where Daniel wasted countless afternoons networking, confirmed that his membership had been revoked. Even the owner of Daniel's favorite restaurant reached out, cautiously asking if the corporate account was still active. It was, but without his name attached. Ashley Monroe posted a cryptic story. "When a man can't even pay for coffee, run." She blocked him publicly, ensuring mutual acquaintances saw her rejection. His image as a successful entrepreneur collapsed faster than his legal defense. LinkedIn showed he viewed my profile 17 times in 1 week, but his own account disappeared after his fresh start post was screenshot and circulated in group chats filled with laughing emojis. 6 months later, on a warm September evening, I hosted my first dinner party since reclaiming my home. Linda Morales arrived early with her wife, carrying wine that cost more than Daniel's monthly gym fees. Sophie Grant came with her husband, bringing lasagna in the dish Daniel once banned because carbs didn't align with his fitness goals. Mrs. Delgado arrived with her famous dumplings, the ones he had sneered at as too ethnic. We gathered around my dining table, the one Daniel had wanted to replace with something cold and modern. Candlelight reflected on my grandmother's china, the same plates he had used as props during his final performance, now fulfilling their real purpose of bringing people together. The conversation flowed easily, filled with genuine laughter instead of the forced chuckles Daniel had rehearsed in the mirror. After dessert, a chocolate soufflé I baked myself, Linda raised her glass. "To Victoria," she said, "who proved the best revenge isn't destroying someone who wronged you. It's protecting what was always yours and letting them destroy themselves." The toast echoed through my house, where every room now held my choices, my memories, my future. Daniel had tried to steal it all with paper weapons and practice speeches. Instead, he learned what happens when performance meets preparation, when pretense collides with patience, when someone who thinks they're taking everything discovers they never had anything to take. If this story of calculated revenge kept you hooked, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Daniel's attorney screamed, "Do you have any idea what you just let her do?" after realizing his client had signed away everything for a house he never owned. What was your favorite moment? Share it in the comments below. And don't miss more stories like this.